Maya never believed in the legends. Stories of lost souls wandering the deep forest, voices calling out in the dead of night, just myths meant to scare travelers, or so she thought. But now, standing alone beneath the towering canopy, swallowed by an unnatural silence, she felt the weight of something unseen pressing in around her. The air was thick, unmoving, and the usual forest sounds, rustling leaves, chirping insects, had vanished. Then, from somewhere in the darkness ahead, a voice called her name. Not a whisper, not an echo. A voice, clear as day, coming from the trees. But Maya was certain, no one else should have been out here. She had set off early that morning, determined to complete her solo hiking trip through the remote wilderness. It was supposed to be a straightforward journey. Follow the marked trail, take in the beauty of the towering trees and winding rivers, and return before nightfall. Her map was old but reliable, the trail carved clearly into the worn paper. Yet somehow, as the day stretched on, she realized she was no longer following the path. The familiar markers, the carved initials on a tree, the pile of stones at a fork, were nowhere in sight. The sun hung low in the sky, golden light bleeding through the branches, but her surroundings were unfamiliar. Every tree looked the same. Every path led deeper into an unfamiliar maze of ancient roots and thick undergrowth. Her heartbeat quickened. Had she really been so careless, or was something leading her astray? Just as panic began to rise, Maya spotted movement ahead, a figure standing between the trees, partially obscured by the dense foliage. Her breath caught in her throat. Was it another hiker? A ranger? She took a cautious step forward, her voice unsteady. "Hello?" The figure stepped closer, and as he emerged in the fading light, she saw an older man with a weathered face and kind eyes. He wore a faded flannel shirt and sturdy boots, as if he belonged to the forest itself. Relief flooded through her. "I think I took a wrong turn," she admitted breathlessly. The man nodded slowly, his expression calm. "It's easy to lose your way here," he said. "These woods don't always let people go so easily, but I can help." Something about his presence reassured her, though a small, uneasy feeling still clung to the edges of her thoughts. He moved with quiet confidence, his steps light on the forest floor as if he had walked this path 1,000 times before. Without hesitation, she followed. The trail he led her on was barely visible, a narrow strip of earth winding through the thickening trees. The air around them grew denser, the shadows stretching unnaturally long as the last remnants of daylight slipped away. Maya tried to shake the feeling that the forest itself was watching, holding its breath as they passed through. As they walked, Maya couldn't shake the strange feeling creeping over her. The deeper they ventured, the more unnatural the forest seemed. The silence was absolute. No rustling leaves, no distant calls of birds, no chirping of insects. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath. The man moved steadily ahead, his posture relaxed but purposeful, as if he had walked these paths countless times before. Maya focused on his measured steps, trying to ignore the way the trees seemed to shift around them, their gnarled branches reaching like skeletal fingers toward the fading sky. Then, without warning, a sudden gust of wind tore through the dense woods, stirring up a cloud of dried leaves and dust. But it wasn't the wind that made Maya's breath hitch. It was the whisper that came with it. A faint murmur carried through the air, barely audible yet undeniably there. The sound sent a cold shiver down her spine as she instinctively quickened her pace, unwilling to look back, unwilling to acknowledge the unseen presence lingering just beyond the trees. The narrow path twisted through the dense undergrowth, swallowed by the deepening twilight. The further Maya walked, the more the forest seemed to shift. Trees standing taller, their shadows stretching unnaturally across the ground, the air growing colder with each step. A damp heaviness clung to her skin, and though her guide moved ahead with steady steps, Maya felt an unshakable tension pressing in from all sides. Then came the sound, a rustling, slow and deliberate, from somewhere just beyond her vision. It wasn't the careless movement of an animal, but something shifting through the undergrowth. Her breath came shallow as she pushed forward, keeping her focus on the path, unwilling to let her fear take hold. The trees grew denser, their gnarled roots weaving through the earth like tangled veins. The path beneath Maya's feet felt less certain, the ground uneven and damp, as if it had not been walked in years. The further she went, the heavier the air became, thick with the scent of damp wood and something faintly metallic. A chill ran through her body, though no wind stirred the branches above. The silence deepened, absorbing even the sound of her own footsteps. A creeping unease settled in her chest, an instinctive warning she couldn't ignore. Still, she pressed on, matching the steady pace of the man ahead, trusting that wherever he was leading her was safer than whatever lay behind. The path ahead seemed endless, swallowed by the growing darkness of the forest. Maya's steps grew lighter, more cautious, as the atmosphere around her thickened with an eerie stillness. Each breath she took felt heavier, as though the air itself resisted her presence. The man in front of her remained composed, moving with quiet confidence, but something about him unsettled her now. He had not spoken a single word since they started walking, yet his presence had been reassuring, until now. A strange feeling settled in her chest, an inexplicable doubt creeping into her mind. The trees around them loomed taller, their twisted limbs forming an unbroken canopy overhead, sealing out the last remnants of daylight. Maya felt an odd sensation, as if the forest itself had subtly changed, as if it were leading her somewhere rather than the man himself. A crushing pressure descended on the air, suffocating and oppressive, as if the forest itself was closing in on Maya. Her heartbeat thundered in her chest, quickening with every step, and an overwhelming sense of being watched gripped her. Shadows flickered at the edge of her vision, unnatural and fast, vanishing whenever she turned her head. Her breath became shallow as the silence pressed in like a vice. The man ahead continued without faltering, his pace steady, but doubt gnawed at Maya. Was he guiding her or leading her into something far worse? Then, a twig snapped behind her, followed by a low, guttural growl. Maya whirled around, her heart racing. A dark figure emerged from the trees, its eyes glowing with hunger, and in an instant, it lunged at her. She didn't hesitate. Panic surged through her as she spun and bolted, her legs pumping furiously beneath her. The sound of heavy breathing, not the man's, followed closely behind. Branches tore at her skin, the path narrowing, but she didn't slow. The man finally turned, slamming to the creature with brutal force, sending it crashing into the trees. But Maya knew better than to stop. Whatever was chasing her wasn't done. She ran, pushing her body past its limits, her breath ragged and desperate, knowing the darkness would catch up with her unless she outran it. The path finally broke through the trees, spilling out onto a narrow dirt road. The shift was almost jarring. The thick, suffocating atmosphere of the forest gave way to open air, yet the tension in Maya's chest did not ease. The man slowed his steps, pausing just at the edge of the road. For a moment, she hesitated, glancing back at the darkened forest behind her. The trees stood motionless, but the weight of unseen eyes still lingered. The man turned slightly, his face unreadable in the dim light, and then with a slow gesture, he pointed toward a small wooden building in the distance. A bar, tucked away at the edge of the countryside, its dimly lit windows flickering like distant stars. Something about it felt strangely out of place, as if it didn't belong to this road or to this night. Maya exhaled shakily, stepping toward it, seeking the comfort of human presence. Maya walked toward the bar, each step feeling lighter now that the trees were behind her. The wooden structure looked old but well kept, its warm glow standing in stark contrast to the cold darkness she had just escaped. As she reached the door, she turned to thank the man, but he was gone. The empty road stretched back toward the forest, silent and still, as if no one had ever walked beside her. A chill rippled down her spine, but she shook it off and stepped inside. The scent of aged wood and faint tobacco filled the air, and the low hum of conversation offered a welcome sense of normalcy. She made her way to the bar, her hands still slightly unsteady, and ordered a drink. Then, almost without thinking, she ordered a second one. The bartender, an older man with tired eyes, raised an eyebrow as he set the glass down. The bartender wiped his hands on a rag, his gaze lingering on the untouched second drink. His voice was calm but edged with curiosity as he asked who the other glass was for. The question made Maya pause. She turned her head slightly, as if expecting to see the man beside her, but the space was empty. The weight of realization settled into her chest, cold and undeniable. He had led her here, guided her out of the forest, yet now he was nowhere to be found. A creeping sense of unease coiled around her thoughts. The bartender studied her expression and let out a slow breath, nodding slightly as if he had seen this before. He leaned forward, lowering his voice, and told her that she wasn't the first. Others had wandered in from the forest, speaking of a silent man who had guided them through the trees. None could explain who he was, only that he appeared when the forest stirred with something darker. A quiet stillness settled over Maya as the bartender's words sank in. She looked down at the second drink, untouched, the condensation slowly pooling around its base. The room felt warmer now, safer, yet the weight of the night still clung to her skin. She turned her gaze toward the window, out into the empty road where the man had last stood. The forest loomed in the distance, dark and impenetrable, but somehow she knew she had left something behind within its depths. Or perhaps something had let her go. The bartender gave a small, knowing nod before turning away to tend to another customer, leaving Maya alone with her thoughts. She reached for her drink, hesitated for just a moment, then took a slow sip, wordless gratitude for the guide who had led her to safety, even if he had never truly been there at all.